Welcome to the Life and Times of Captain Barney Miller podcast. I'm your host, Mike White. Joining me, of course, is the one and only, the rookie, Chris Dashew.
I'm here for a good time. Can I blow up my own building, though? Hey, don't ship me off to don't ship me off to the Arctic next. I hear I might not come back.
Antarctica's right.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Outpost 31.
Outpost 31. Yeah.
This guy's had a lot of roles over the years. He was a sex cult guru for a little while there, too. And he showed up when was that the UFO episode he was on, too?
I think so, yeah. Man, what a wild career this guy has had. From fighting the Thing to being Marty McFly's brother. No? Is he not Marty McFly's older brother?
Nope.
Man, that guy looks the same then.
Yeah, no, he's Jimmy Olsen in the Superman films, the original Superman films.
Which I have never seen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, Father Malone. There's a new episode for you.
But I was right about the Thing, because I was like, okay, this is the guy from the Thing, at least.
Yeah, so. He's the guy with the best line of the Thing. You got to be fucking kidding me.
Yeah, that is one of the better lines in a movie full of great lines.
We are wrapping up the stellar 6th season of Barney Miller by talking about the last 3 episodes of the 6th season. The Architect, which ran March 27th, 1980. The Inventor from May 1st, 1980. And Fog from May 8th, 1980. I'm going to just say it right now. Fog. Great way to end the entire series if they wanted to. But we'll get there.
Yeah. Is that, I mean, I know you want to get there, but I do want to say just out in front, like, it is weird that there is this moment now in the show. Mm-hmm. And there's this, and the way it ends is like, I don't know, the way this season ends does feel a little bit oddly definitive.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to get that a lot when we talk about Columbo. Like there's a few seasons where it's like, that could have been the end of Columbo.
Right.
Like there's even one where it's almost like he goes into the sunset kind of thing.
Right.
And this isn't as dramatic as that, but it definitely has some overtones.
Yeah. Well, and you kind of already mentioned it, like, for as good as this season has been, which I think for me, this may be the best season of the show that we've seen. Like, everything has really been great, if not really great. I mean, there have been a couple duds there, but there hasn't been a Wojo's Girl level of dud. But I think for me, yeah, like, would I have been upset if this was our final episode of this show? Obviously, because I would like to keep talking with you about Barney Miller. But yeah, like, these 3 episodes together make kind of a pretty tidy little bundle if you wanted to just be like, and that's it, folks. So, but The Architect is a weird one, huh?
Yeah. It's especially because it starts off with something very important that you kind of just don't even pay attention to, or at least I didn't. I mean, when we start the episode, we've got Barney coming out of his office, and it is only Levitt there, and there's a guy already in the cage. So we haven't seen the arrest of him. We just kind of get the aftermath and like, oh, I'm going to run this guy down to the tombs. And then later on, when 2 other guys bust in and they're just like, we're here to take so-and-so. I'm like, oh, that was the guy from the beginning of this episode's only 25 minutes, 25 seconds long, but yet I'm like, oh, all right. Yeah, I got you now.
Right.
These gunmen are interesting. I mean, we kind of have like the ethnic stereotype of Choo Choo Malev in here, but Paul Lieber,
baby, again.
And he's going to come back 3 more times in the next season. He's going to come back, though, as a cop. He will be Sergeant Eric Dorsey, Detective Sergeant.
I really thought he'd been in this show already.
No, this is actually his first time.
That's wild, because there was another
episode similar.
Okay, because I mean, the thing I know Paul Lieber from is he was in an episode of the X-Files where he played like he played Micah Hoffman, which was supposed to be like a thinly veiled version of correct me if I'm wrong, the kind of like social rights protester Abby Hoffman.
Oh,
like,
right.
And it's but like he dies and then he like comes back to life, and it's very weird, but for whatever reason he made an impression. I mean, that episode also has Gary Shandling in it, of all people. So, but yeah, like when I saw him, I was like, I could have swore he was in another episode of this show, but I guess it must have just been someone else who looked like him.
Yeah, he almost looks like the homeless guy that we talked about last episode.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. He's got a little bit of that vibe. Almost the same voice, though, I would say.
Yeah. I love his hair, though.
Oh, yeah. His hair's awesome.
When those two dudes walk in, I was like, what the fuck is... Oh, okay. They've got guns now. Got it. Yeah, it's
Which
so weird.
Not the first time we've seen this. I think that goes all the way back to the pilot where we have somebody busting in with a gun or whatever.
Yeah, wasn't the last time someone had a gun? Wasn't it Don Calfa? Yeah, that's what I thought. Hangdog Don Calfa. Yeah. I was kind of taken aback. They were like the first thing in the episode, like, wait a second. Oh, right. Like you said, we didn't even see it. Like it just kind of existed. It is en media res, which is kind of odd for this show. Like most of the time we're seeing those people being brought in. We're seeing the part of the gag is the booking, and we don't see any of that here. So I guess I should have known that there was going to be more to it because they don't give it any fanfare. But yeah, when those two dudes walk in, I was like, what is going on? Oh, okay. They've got guns. Got it.
Well, and especially they keeping that guy who's in the cage in the frame when you have that long exchange between Wojo and Barney about Wojo, why he's late, while he went to church.
Went to church.
Yeah.
He was praying.
See, I recently had an employee who called me up on a Sunday night and he's just like, oh, I can't make it to work tomorrow. I'm having car troubles. And I'm like, okay. And then the next day, for whatever reason, or 2 days later, because he came in on a Tuesday, he goes, I have to tell you the truth. I lied to you. I was actually too drunk to drive home. So I stayed in like East Lansing or whatever. And I'm like, why do you feel the need to tell me that you lied? Because now I'm just going to distrust everything that you say.
Ow. Yeah, dude. What the fuck?
Yeah, that was a bad move, man.
Yeah, I don't get what Wojo's doing because I don't think Barney believes him. Like the longer the lie goes, the less I'm going to believe you. Yeah. Oh, I was praying, and help the old lady with her tire. And, oh, I saved a kitten from a tree. It's like, okay, super cop, whatever you say. Yeah, Wojo Howitz has been a weird character this season, but not a bad one. But
no.
He hasn't had the character growth this season. He's more or less like returned back to center. I feel like the character that we've seen, as this is the final time we're talking about the 6th season, I would say the character that's gone through the most transformative growth might be Harris.
I think you're right. Yeah. I mean, he's had the book come out this season. And now he's having all these tax troubles.
He's aired his shit with Barney, like out in front of everybody, and he's still sticking to it.
Yeah.
Like, is it this episode or it is this episode where he's like, what do you want me to get you? I'm in Jackson. Or Jackson Hole is like, what are the thing with the turquoise and a bolo? And he's like, oh God. And he like walks out and he like makes the face. And it's one of those things where if it were real life, you would turn around and make the face and as you're walking out of the room, but Harris does it and Barney sees him do it, which like, I don't think would have happened a season ago, but now they're kind of like, I wouldn't say they have like a friendly rivalry, but I don't think they're seeing eye to eye anymore, but that is okay. You just don't see eye to eye with everybody you work with. You don't have to be fucking simpatico with everybody. It's not a requirement.
This episode has a lot of stuff going on. We've got the whole thing that we've already alluded to with the two gunmen coming in and wanting to take back their boy. Then we've got this insurance agent that comes in, who's trying to sell insurance to Wojo Howitz, but yet he's also trying to sell insurance to everybody else. We have the repercussions of Dietrich being stuck in the office, and he's just angry about that. I love how he's like, it almost feels like I'm being punished.
Oh, right. And you know what? I like that that's a holdover from the last episode. Last 2 episodes, I guess.
And then we've got, David Clennon coming in here as Howard Speer, who I think is a reference to Albert Speer, who was Hitler's architect. And this guy, also, I would say that the Howard probably comes from Atlas Shrugged. I'm trying to remember some Ayn Rand fan.
They make a joke in the episode about Ayn Rand,
That's right. That's
the Fountainhead, or they're talking about the Fountainhead, right?
Oh, that's right. It's the Fountainhead.
Yeah.
That's right. It's John Galt who's in... Howard Rourke is the one from the Fountainhead.
Guess what? I've never read any Ayn Rand.
I've read Anthem, and that was good. And it's also super short. And then 2 really obnoxious people that I went to high school with both read The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, and they were completely insufferable human beings. And the whole idea of insufferable people reading Ayn Rand seems to hold true. Like throughout everybody that I've ever talked with.
I was about to say, I have not read, like I said, I've not read either. So does that make me less of a toxic man?
Oh, yes.
Well, that's the thing. Like, yeah, to your point, like I have not heard now as an adult anyone speak glowingly about the people that speak glowingly about Ayn Rand. It's again, I'm not going to point fingers and name names, but certain people's names and faces and high-heeled boots come to mind when we talk about the kind of people that I assume are like, oh yeah, I love Ayn Rand, bro. It's like, oh, whatever, you fucking neocon turd. Like, fine. Like, I don't know. It's not for me. It's never motivated me to get involved. So
Howard Spear is very angry because his plans, he's an architect, he's the titular architect, his plans have been changed and he does not like the way that his building is. So eventually, what comes out way later in the episode, after he's asking everybody what time it is, incessantly, yeah. And I'm glad that Wojo finally picks up on it and is like, hey, there's something going on out here. And we find out that he has planted bombs in his own building.
Which, hey, the optics of that are really something, aren't they? In New York City? Yikes.
Oh,
I mean, look, obviously this is, 1980, so nobody knew 21 years later, but it was pretty wild that it's just like, oh, and look, a building's just going to blow up. Like, it's just buildings just, and you never get the sense of how big the building is, but we know that they're not on the first floor. And you can see, because here's the biggest, can I point out what the biggest revelation in this episode was for me? We are in the view of a window as the audience. I did not realize that. I don't think that they've ever made note of it before. Correct me if I'm wrong, dear listener, fan of Barney Miller, but in that moment where they're like watching out, they're staring at the camera. So that would imply through the sightlines that there's a window. So I guess it's just a bay of windows, and that's what we're meant to understand is where we have been this whole time, is when they're looking out towards us, they're just looking out towards the city, I guess.
Yeah, and I want to say that the lighting is even a little different in this episode, where it feels like it's sunset.
It's like being lit from where we are a little bit more. Yeah, it's bizarre. Was it this season or last season where, I think it was this season, where we had the bathroom became a place that we finally saw. Like, it's weird this season we've seen a little bit more of the of this part of the precinct more than we ever have. It's kind of odd. Like, I was surprised when they looked straight at the camera. I was like, oh my God, there's a window here? Like, I never thought of us. Yeah, through us. They can see us. But it was just bizarre because I guess I had never thought about what it is they're looking at. Because again, because it's a TV show, because it is the show that it is, it's just 3 walls. It's not 4. So yeah, it's a little odd for it to be, oh, there's a window there. They can see the city and they can see this building exploding. Man.
Yeah.
Wojo Howitz just describing how 9/11 happened is also bizarre. I just stood there and watched as it fell. I was like, oh, my God, what?
That was chilling for me too.
Okay, I'm glad it wasn't just me. Like,
no, I was like, oh, so you're a first responder, Wojo. Okay, all right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm sorry, it was actually Dietrich that picked up on it, the whole time thing. So it wasn't Wojo.
Dietrich given a backseat in this episode as well.
Yeah, but Wojo is the more heroic one since he's still on duty and is able to run over to the building. It sounds like several times. And then poor Harris is desperate to go on his skiing trip and just keeps getting delayed over and over and over again, which is kind of nice. I'd like to see a flustered Harris.
Yeah, well, and again, like, as much as I like his character, like, he's a dick, so he deserves, like, he's gonna get shit thrown his way, because that's what happens to characters like that in TV shows. So yeah, he plays. I mean, I think I've said this before. He plays harried really well. Ron Glass does, but I mean, he's just, everybody has such a big personality. But yeah, I think it's interesting how big of a backseat Dietrich takes in this episode, but it makes sense given that the last 2 episodes were like Dietrich all day, every day, like
name of the episode.
Yeah, literally. I did really like Norman Barthold as Bob Schuler, the insurance agent. Please sign this, please. All right, now, be careful.
The look on Wojo's face when he just gives him like a little crooked smile before he signs that paper, just like
Yeah.
Oh, I'm about to go throw myself into danger. Haha.
Yeah, it's like, well, you asked for it. You wanted me to sign, dude. Like, and here we go. I love that interaction. And then I love at the end where Barney's trying to get away and he's like, Mrs. Miller. And he looks at him. He's like,
Yeah.
Hey, look, Barbara Barry is getting mentioned.
Yeah. Surprise, surprise. I was really happy with how angry Barney gets at the gunman. And just is like, you're going to have to wait. You're going to.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what their plan is really poorly thought out. Obviously. Yeah. He's like, there's like 200 cops downstairs. Like, what is your plan here? I'm like, well, you know what? You made it far enough. Oh, okay. I like how they're just like, okay, fine. You're right. Like we did make it far enough. So yeah, those two are pretty good. And yeah, I think it's a nice little mix up to have everything going on. And then these two dudes just kind of show up and take control of the situation. It did catch me off guard. I like this episode a fair amount. And yeah, the thing with the blowing up of the building, I think where there's also like where they don't think it's going to explode and like Barney walks away and he's like, very funny. And then boom, it explodes. And like, oh shit.
Yeah, that was nice. And yeah, the architect himself is almost that paranoid with proof type of person. But really we get that so much in the Inventor, the following episode, where we get to see, I mean, the episode pretty much opens with Barney coming out of his office again, but wearing that bolo tie, man. And I love when Harris walks in and he just rolls his eyes.
Well, Dietrich's like, I'm not looking away because it's bad. It's because I'm getting a cup of coffee. But it is, oh my God, it's the most garish. I mean, look, Barney always dresses the same for the most part, but it is, Hal Linden with that bolo tie on is just, he's a vision. I love it. I mean, it's so garish with the B and the M on it. It's like, of course. And Harris going, oh, I didn't think you'd wear it. And you did. Yeah, I like that actually pays off. Like, again, not saying that another show wouldn't have, but all of a sudden the show is calling back to itself, which is not something it was really doing. I mean, again, when you have actors playing different characters on your show, that more or less is like a tacit kind of agreement with the audience. Like, we're not going to hold people to being the same characters every time. I hope you understand that. Now it's like, oh, but there are going to be reoccurring things. There are going to be storylines that come back. There are going to be holdover things that as a modern TV viewer, I appreciate it, but it was not something that, like, I think if the show had never done it, I wouldn't be disappointed that it didn't. It's just, it's nice to see that there are some modern storytelling conventions that they are kind of hewing to.
Right. I mean, we had a little bit of that in the earlier seasons, like, Wentworth and Wojo got together in this episode and they'll have a relationship later on. But I feel like this season in particular, and a little bit of the last season, really seems to cleave to that idea of this is one continuous story now. Obviously, it's not like the mythology type of thing. It's not X-Files. We don't have the cigarette smoking man, even though we do get to see some people just smoking in the office in the next episode, in Fog episode. But yeah, this whole idea of us maintaining a storyline, it really feels like it's come to something with this 6th season.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of it, I mean, again, I mentioned Harris, like, I feel like a lot of it does come because of the Harris character, because of the blood on the badge, and like that being a thing that they keep referencing. Because, yeah, I mean, if there was nothing to reference, there wouldn't seem like a progression of time. But yet, because Harris is, dealing with other things in this episode, it's like, oh, that come from that. Like, it's just, it keeps building on it. And yeah, it feels more like a cohesive narrative and less like just a sitcom, the way it, again, not a problem, but that is the way it felt early on in the, first 4 seasons of the show, at least.
Right. Yeah, to your point, I mean, we have the story of Barney and his wife, but we barely have touched on that. And like, that has vacillated. Wojo and Dietrich don't seem to have these storylines. They are very static characters. I mean, we talked so much about how Wojo has matured over the time, but he doesn't have like a central throughput. Like, he had his whole
thing. Tried.
Well, they tried with the girlfriend, but they were trying also with the whole sergeant's exam, which kind of pays off in the fog episode. But here it's like, he doesn't have something where he's working on something. Like his whole idea of coming in the last episode and lying about church, it's like, well, that seems very out of character for Wojo, but at the same time, I don't know what's in character for Wojo. He's a good Polish Catholic boy, so it kind of makes sense that he would go to church, but we've never really heard about that. Plus, it was kind of odd. I didn't realize that they were working on Sundays, and it also feels like they're working in the evenings quite a bit now.
Yeah. We didn't mention in the last episode, he goes, is it extra if I'm Polish?
Right.
For the insurance? And not anymore.
Not anymore, no.
Not anymore. Yeah, and it's weird. Like for me, Wojo has always been like, I don't get his character in a lot of ways because at times the show feels like it wants him to have a character. Right. And then other times it's not that it's content for him to not have a character, but it's more content to just let him be part of the gags. Like, I don't even know how to describe it because, like, yeah, the times they've tried to characterize him more than just part of the other dudes in the precinct that aren't Barney at this point or Harris, like that Wojo's Girl episode is atrocious. Like, and I understand why they haven't done more since, because
right.
I wonder if that was it. Like, was it because of how bad that episode was received? Like, because they were trying to make Wojo his own thing, they just like backed off of it so hard? Because wasn't that the thing? It was supposed to be like a Wojo spinoff, right?
Right. Yeah. That was like the backdoor pilot for it.
Right. So that kind of is what it seems like for me. It's not that they've like given up on his character, but they've definitely like backed off him a little bit. But what's interesting is he's the focus of this entire episode, more or less, with the psychiatrist character, the hypnotherapist, who is played by Dan Fraser, who I just saw in Take the Money and Run, pretty much playing almost the exact same character. Very similar, like therapist, hypnotist, psychiatrist character.
He's got a great voice. I really liked him, and I liked his sense of humor in this. I thought that he was going to be some sort of stuck-up guy or be defending, like when James Cromwell came in, he was just like, what do you want from me? I'm a sketch artist, quit picking on me. I thought for sure this guy would be like, this is a legitimate field. People really think that hypnosis just makes people, cluck like chickens, but there's really something to this. But instead, he's very calm, and he just really gets ingratiated with Wojo pretty quickly. I thought that was great. And I like how when he has Wojo focus on something, that Wojo's focusing on that fucking tie.
Yeah. I like the idea that he doesn't hang a lantern on hypnosis, like, because we talked about, the paranoids with proof, and he could have been part of that weird, like, equation, because like you mentioned the James Cromwell character, but no, I don't know, like, the Dan Fraser character, the character that he plays, is one of the more interesting people to come into the precinct, because he does just have like a natural chemistry with Wojo in a really, I don't know, refreshing way, because most of the time Wojo's just rolling his eyes at the people that come into the precinct. They tend to annoy him.
Right. Well, yeah, you would think that he would be like, there's no way, Bard, I'm not going to go under, I'm not going to do this. And I thought for sure this whole episode is going to be him resisting doing it. But, by 9 minutes in, he's starting to go under. And I was like, oh, that's great. I thought this was going to be, don't try to turn me into a chicken Bard. And I'm, there's something in my past that makes me not want to do this, because that feels very much like the Wojo way. And I have to call out Max Gale for just like, he plays befuddled so well. After the Inventor comes in, because they've arrested this Inventor who has created this battery that will never run out. And he is arrested for stealing his own blueprints back from the company that he worked or works for. And we kind of do a dissolve, and Dietrich is looking at these plans, and Max Gale standing right next to him. And Gale just has this look on his face like, I really am trying to understand this, but I just can't grasp it. Meanwhile, Dietrich's like, oh, well, this makes sense. And he starts pointing out all this stuff. Of course, he can read these blueprints like nobody's business. With Dietrich's future life, I wouldn't be surprised if he just memorized all this and actually created that battery later on, or if he already has technology like that on his home planet.
I was wondering if you were going to say the home planet thing or not. Yeah, I wondered that too. He just like looked at that. He's like, these humans are coming along very quickly with their technology.
That whole thing of like, oh, there's a car that can run X number of miles on a single tank of gas. And I was like, well, don't forget about the car that runs on water. It's like, again, you mentioned X-Files earlier. And it's like, this is the stuff that the lone gunman had. I think the first episode of the lone gunman was them getting the car that runs on water, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, talk about another show that had a completely random 9/11 reference.
Oh, yeah.
Even more so than this one. Wasn't that actually the Twin Towers in that show? Like,
I think it was.
Good Lord. Yeah. I do find it interesting. Yeah, the Dietrich character, I mean, again, he's obviously such a fun part of the show, but yeah, they really are leaning on him just being like the expert of everything, to the point where I do want to ask this question because I feel like it hasn't been asked yet of the show, and maybe a more contemporary show would have asked it. If this guy's so fucking smart, why are you a cop?
Right. I think he's trying to ingratiate himself into human society myself.
Okay. I mean, that's my headcanon is like, what's a job where you could disappear, like a cop, a firefighter, like public service. You could get away with like being weird because you have to have such a outward persona, like your internal persona can be so different. So yeah, that's always been my read on it. But again, if you don't go the alien explanation, what is the explanation?
Right. Yeah, it's not the typical cop that I know anyway that goes to the Goethe Festival in Wyoming or whatever. They have a blast.
I know, right? Can I also mention how Lyndon's shirt just gets progressively more and more open the longer the episode goes?
Yeah, that tie is really weighing him down. It keeps going down and the shirt keeps opening out.
Yeah, I was like, all right, where are we headed with this? Like, we're showing a little bit of the chest hair. All right, this show's getting a little bit more exciting than normal. It was funny. Like, it really, like, he shows up, he walks out and it's buttoned, and then like halfway through the episode, he's just full open shirt, and it's like, whoa, man.
I love when Wojo's under and he starts talking about that stupid tie and like, oh yeah, Harris got it for him as a joke, but he wore it. Wow.
And I like that this is essentially a callback to the last episode. Again, like they mention it here that's where he got it, but that was a plot point in the last episode. So yeah, again, kudos to everyone working on the show while Danny Arnold is not there for really stepping it up.
I wonder if it's Noam Pitlick, if he brought that to the party or if it was just something that the writers kind of decided to do. But yeah, I love it. I love that we have this continuity now.
Well, and this episode and the last episode and the next episode were all written by Dungan, Stein, and Sheehan. So I've got to also assume it's a little bit of that. But I mean, this season, a lot of it has been written by the three of them or the two of them, Dungan and Stein for the most part. And then a couple other people will show up, but their names are all over this season.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I think also some of it is like these are the right people to be writing this show at this point in the show's run as well.
It must be much more gratifying as an actor to be able to have that continuity, be able to build on what happened last week rather than just come in fresh, tabula rasa every single week where it's like, all right, what's this adventure? Does my character get to do anything? Do I get to learn anything? Instead, with this now, it's like, yes, you do. You do get to have this progression.
Right. I've got to believe, yes. Similarly, like I know if I were doing this job professionally, that's what I would want someone to be cognizant of, is like where this character has been. Because, I mean, you and I talk about a lot of TV, a lot of other TV, not just this. You can find all those shows at weirdingwaymedia.com. But like Kolchak as a character never really grew. Like Richard had him, I know you're listening, but like Kolchak was a very static character in a lot of ways, like, which is not a problem. Like, that was not an expectation at the time, but that doesn't mean that wasn't the actor's expectation at the time. That just wasn't the expectation of the viewers, the writers, the producers. But I have got to believe if you're an actor on a television show that is running for seasons on end, even in the 50s, even in the 60s, even in the 70s, you would hope that the people writing for the show are taking note of what has already happened and not just doing the same things, not just having you run through the same character arcs. Like, I've got to assume that. Maybe I'm wrong, but if I were an actor, that would be something I would personally appreciate.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of appreciated, I love when the inventor's boss or the person from his company shows up, because he's played by Ben Piazza, who I really didn't recognize from very much at all, except he's the guy that Jake and Elwood are bothering at Chez Paul. He's the guy who's like, sir, these men smell. They smell bad.
I have not seen Blues Brothers in such a long time.
Oh, yeah. He's the one that the Jake turns around and is just like, you're women. I want to buy your daughter. How much were your wife? Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, man, it's been, I want to say I haven't seen that movie since college. So like 10 plus years. I feel like, obviously I'm a huge fan of Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi, but I don't know. It's one of those ones that just like falls through the cracks of things when I'm looking for a comedy to watch. But I thought it was pretty funny here. I mean, again, given kind of a thankless role to just show up and be the stern dickhead, which like half of the episodes we've seen have one of these characters like come in and be like, I'm the one here whose day you've ruined, is essentially what it is. Like, I'm having to come and deal with you idiots. And it's like, I like these kinds of characters in this show, but they are a dime a dozen. He makes it his own, but they really are. I mean, we've seen these characters a lot just because of the way this show's setup tends to roll. You have a character who does something, and then you have the character who comes in upset that they've done something. So
right. Like what was that? There was the guy who was addicted to something, and it was pretty unseemly. And they had like his support person come in, and we had seen his support person on another episode. What was it? Wasn't child pornography?
Was it like the sex? Was he like an addict of like sex addiction or like flashing people or something?
Oh, I think it was the flasher.
Okay,
yeah,
that's what it was. Yeah.
And that that's like one of the first roles that we saw with that. But yes, you're right. We've seen that role countless times. And I like how this guy is just like, well, okay, are you going to agree to this? You're going to agree to that? Oh, do you want to raise? Yeah, you're like, first off, you're fired, but we can hire you back if you just shut your mouth, basically. And we've seen that a bunch. Like, this fits into that paranoids with proof perfectly. And the guy even has the proof with him and, is verified by Dietrich. Like, oh yeah, it seems like this would work.
By the alien himself.
Yes.
The alien who quotes Shakespeare and Cookie Barn.
Yes, so good. That was nice. Yeah, the beginning of the Fog episode where we've got this almost poetry off between Barney and Dietrich. It's so nice. Yeah. And, well, actually, it's Barney and it's no, I take it back. Wojo and Dietrich. Yeah, which is amazing because Wojo's quoting. What is he quoting? He's talking about the fog coming in on
its haunches. On its haunches.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember who said that. A little cat's feet is Carl Sandburg. There we go. Okay. Yeah.
And then Dietrich just quotes Cookie Burns. I got smog in my noggin. What is wrong? He's the kind of person who I would laugh if I knew them, like, at my job. And then I would also turn to him and be like, what is fucking wrong with you?
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know. We all know somebody like that. And if you don't know somebody like that, you may be that person for someone else. Dietrich is just, I don't know. Yeah, it's weird that it's Dietrich and Wojo of all the people. Like, Wojo quoting poetry.
Yeah.
Little cat feet. It's a great phrase to hear come out of Max Gale's mouth, though.
And when Harris comes in and is just all chipper and everything, it's like Wojo's just like, what's going on? I think Wojo seems to be very in tune with everybody in this episode, especially when Barney's got some problems. Because he's the guy, Wojo, I think, is the guy talking about how Barney had his exam that he's supposed to move up in rank. And because I also think, going back to what I was talking about earlier, we had that whole story of Wojo not being able to make sergeant for a long time. So I think he really empathizes with Barney on this.
Well, I was going to say, like, if any character is going to be the one that is going to acknowledge someone else not getting a promotion, I feel like it has to be Wojo, right? I mean, isn't this, I mean, again, I don't know how this show ends, but I've got to assume this show is going to end with one of them, if not both of them, finally getting those goddamn promotion. And it's, like that's how they walk out, and I'm sure that's what it is, because again, like this is the kind of show where they've been teasing it so much that we're effectively in the end game of the show after this season. I mean, we have 2 more seasons, but it's only 2 more seasons, and you don't do that storyline any other time other than the end of the final season at this point, because you would have done it by now, because then you would have done something else with it. Because like they kind of did with James Gregory's character with Luger, where they had him, knocked down for a bit, but then he, went back. Like they could have already done that with Barney or Wojo, and they haven't. So now my assumption is the show's going to end with one of them, if not both of them, getting those promotions that have dogged them for, essentially at this point, half of a decade. By the show's end, it'll be almost a decade.
I really like the people that they have in the cage in this episode. The African-American gentleman with the horn. He seems like cooler than cool. I'm surprised that we didn't get, because he tacked another busker because they were on his street corner.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm surprised we don't get them. I'm surprised the buskers don't come in and we have a whole war or anything, but it's very like off screen for them. He almost seems a little like an afterthought, but not too bad. And him playing the blues on that horn while Barney's just experiencing the blues in his office with all the lights off, smoking cigarettes in there. It's really fitting, especially this idea that it's this thick, foggy night. I mean, they set the stage for this very well.
Well, and it also seems like the fog has rolled into the precinct, like inside of it. Like maybe not literally, but just, I don't know. Yeah, there's a weird vibe to this episode. But again, like it's the end of the 6th season. It's a little bit more serious. We do get to see some Barney character like changes and movement. I really like when Barney is the focus of the episode. Obviously. Oh, yeah. I'm not going to say it hasn't happened enough, but I think it's happened a lot up until this point. So they're not doing it as much because they don't have to, which is perfectly fine. But I like that we do go back to the idea that he's not promoted to deputy inspector, that is clearly something that's weighing on him. And we get a moment with him to see what he actually feels because he doesn't get the promotion, which is a nice moment in this show.
And it was so funny while I was watching it. He says at one point, he's like, well, back in the old days, it was me. And he names off 3 other cops. And I go, oh, shit, he sounds just like Luger. And then he goes, oh, I sound just like Luger.
Yeah. Me and Brownie and oh, God. Oh, no. Just stares. He stares at the screen and just, you can hear Luger in the background. Brownie.
I no Luger in any of these episodes, and barely.
I feel like he should have been here in this episode. If anywhere, he should have been here to hey, Bonnie, it's okay, Bonnie. You'll get through it. I got bumped down earlier this year, Bonnie. Like, could have seen that, but yeah, I was shocked.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about the Paranoids last episode, and here we have another one played by one of the best character actors, Sidney Lassick, who you finally saw. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest this year.
No, I was about to say I finally sure did see One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest this year. So his presence is a lot differently received than it would have been 6 months ago.
Oh yeah, like he is totally Cheswick. I'm waiting for him to bust out about cigarettes, but instead he's just screaming about microwaves and the phone company, and that he's getting cooked with microwaves and that they're ruining everything. I'm like, yeah, this sounds very similar to people that I talk to today. This sounds like a 5G person.
Yeah, for whatever reason, he plays crazy really, really well. He was actually in an episode of The X-Files where he plays, I want to say he plays a guy in prison, like a guy like a psychiatric patient who's autistic and he can like see the murders or something. And again, like, man, to be known for that one role, I guess, like, I don't know. Isn't that what it kind of feels like with Sidney Lassick? Like he kind of was always doing the thing from Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah, there were some times where he would show up in things like Cool as Ice or Deep Cover. He had a pretty good
Vanilla Ice vehicle film.
That's
Hooray.
correct. As soon as he walked on screen, I was like, "Oh, hey, it's Cheswick from Went Through the Cuckoo's Nest." But he could be a little bit more calm. But when he's unhinged, he's at his top. I really like him unhinged.
And he was in an episode last season. He was in Toys last season, the 12th episode.
That's right. I thought he had been on here before.
Yeah. No, he's really good. I mean, yeah, like you said, he's great in everything I've seen him in, especially this show twice. So yeah, but again, like for me, this is really like this is a Barney episode, which is a very welcome thing at this point in the show. Because, yeah, I mean, this has essentially been a thing that's been an issue since like season 1, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and even, we talked about Paranoid to Prove. I forgot he comes in with a whole sheaf of articles, and Barney is about to read them, but he's so upset about what's going on that he's just like, book this guy, would you? Yeah. I'm like, oh, I've never really seen Barney get that flustered. That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, look, Hal Linden is obviously an amazing actor. But yeah, like what he does in this episode is just, I don't know, like it's a moment that they break from the fun of the show.
Right. With good reason, and I like that it's not somebody's dead. There's a tragedy. Something awful is happening outside the precinct, that it's Barney really wanted this and he feels that he's been cheated. And I can kind of see that. And I also like that the guys say, well, it's probably our fault.
Which is really fucking fucked up.
I really like that though, where it's like,
but it is pretty fucked up, right?
It is.
Yeah. I like the three of them on his couch and him just like sitting at his desk, and he just goes, it's getting harder and harder to find a sense of purpose around here. It's like, oh brother, I hear you. Like, god damn. Yeah, again, like this show takes a moment for itself, which it really, again, it's normally about the jokes. Yeah. And it's not that there aren't jokes in this episode, but Barney's character is not getting taken down a peg, but he's taking himself down a peg in this episode. Oh, yeah. Unnecessarily.
He's beating himself up pretty good.
Yeah. But Hal Linden does it better than anybody else. I mean, he's I don't know, he's such a fantastic actor. And just those like quiet moments where he's staring out the window and, just those moments to himself that we really don't see in a lot of other non-Barney specific episodes. A lot of the time he goes into his office and then he's in his office. Like, not that we don't go check in on it, but this time, like, we're checking in with him by himself.
I love some of these smaller moments, like when I keep wanting to call him Cheswick, but when Karse, I guess his name is, Victor Karse, when he's getting booked and Harris is like, oh, you can make your phone call, and holds out the phone, and he's just like, no, put it away. Like, just checking. Or when Levitt gets a phone call later on, he's like, don't answer that. And Levitt just does this, like, points at the phone and shrugs his shoulders. It's like, sorry, I can't really do anything about this.
And this is the episode with Levitt's jacket again, is it not?
Oh, yeah, that jacket.
Pink jacket. The pink jacket. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's a bit much, man.
I love it, though. I mean, it's like the second or third time that we've seen it. It's, yeah. I mean, hey, Ron Carey had a sense of style for a little short guy. Hell of a sense. I mean, again, like, I assume that the Levitt character doesn't know he doesn't know any better, but he doesn't look like a complete goon. But the jacket is a bit much, but nobody ever mentions it. Like, nobody ever like points it out. You would think that Harris would say something, but I guess it isn't as out of style as the two of us are assuming it is.
Oh, no, it's not. I mean, it does remind me a little bit of like Herb Tarlick from WKRP in Cincinnati, but yeah, it was kind of the style, also with wearing an onion on your belt, which was the style at the time.
Right. I am sad to see that we are not going to get to see the bolo anymore. I assume that the bolo is gone. No more bolo. The bolo is now... It's probably buried. I hope they were just like, Hal, you can keep the bolo prop. Like, take it over.
Please.
Take it over.
Yeah. With the BM on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am also surprised that Levitt doesn't empathize more with Barney. And he tries to make an attempt. He goes in. He's just like, hey, there's a break-in on Houston. And Barney's like, so? He's like, I thought maybe we should put in an appearance.
Right.
But this whole thing of, because Levitt is constantly being passed over for stuff. So
all the time.
All the time. So I almost wish that he rubbed Barney's face in it.
Yeah, it's weird that they don't, like you mentioned it already, that Levitt is kind of like, he's here in this episode, but not really. Yeah, it was weird to me that he doesn't participate in any of this more. He's really there to foster more of the gags, but not relate to Barney. Because, yeah, like you said, like, again, there are two characters in the precinct that could really sympathize and empathize with Barney's plight. And I don't know, it's kind of surprising that it's Wojo, but not really. But given that Levitt hasn't been fleshed out as much as he could have been, seems like a missed opportunity to give him and Barney kind of like a quiet moment in his office together. To be like, well, you know, Barney, I get passed over all the time and I'm still here. And it's like, what? That's more than enough just to give like an idea that he's cognizant of his own situation and he is able to be sympathetic for someone else, even though it doesn't seem like anybody in the precinct is sympathetic towards his plight. So maybe that's why. But if that is the case, like you said, then show us him being a fucking dick anyways. Like, if not now, when? If they're never going to do it, then I guess this is another opportunity that they didn't take. So I like Levitt a lot in this season. I think this is definitely the season where I've come around the most on Levitt. But this moment here at the end of this season does feel like a pretty big missed opportunity to put kind of a cap on his character for the season and give him and Barney a moment to kind of commiserate, which we really have not seen between the two of them. And I don't know if we'll ever get that moment, but I hope we do, but this was a chance to do it.
I love when the boss from the phone company shows up and he's just like, the microwaves are totally safe. And then Dietrich's like, how long you had that twitch? And he's like, I've got this ringing in my head. Does anybody have any aspirin? The one character that kind of sticks out for me in this one, and I almost like it. It's the guy that Levitt and Wojo arrest, Fred Bauer, who was breaking into a Christian Science reading room and was supposed to be breaking into, I think it was a jewelry store, right? And he just is there to make color commentary. Like, he seems so outside of the episode that he's commenting on the episode while he's in it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say J.J. Barrie is like the perfect, like, to say, where did they get this guy from? Central Casting? Like, totally. He looks like a New Yorker of
and he's
1980s.
got the voice.
Yeah.
I was looking for my car. Yeah, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, dude. Like, but the way he looks too, just like the way he walks in and his attitude, it's like, this guy is just like, they just took a New Yorker off the street. Like, that's that's what it feels like. Yeah, he's fantastic. I almost kind of wish he was in a different episode because, again, like, it's not that this is a serious episode, but it could have been.
He's there to undermine it. You know,
right.
Like when Barney is yelling at him, like, take a seat. And it's like, whoa, hey, you know, and like, he just takes that role of, now I'm going to crack jokes about everything, which I was really okay with it. At first I was taken aback, but it was like, all right, this kind of works for me.
Yeah. He's marveling the scenes. That's what he's doing. Taking all the piss out of those emotional moments, which is perfectly fine.
Between him and Lassick, because Lassick also, when the boss comes in, or the phone company guy comes in, and Harris goes, whoa, hold the phone. And Lassick's like, you're sick, you know that?
Yeah, he Sidney Lassick, I think, kind of steals the episode. Again, like, I kind of wish all of the fun parts of this episode were in a different episode where we're not having to like contend with Barney.
Oh, you want a very special episode of Barney?
Well, but you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like they set it up for it. I'm also really surprised that they didn't have him on the phone with Liz at any point. Like,
true, yeah.
Right? Like, oh, Liz, I got passed over again. But if they remembered that Barbara Barrie was in the show, it's only for a fleeting moment anyways. So
right. Just a mention in the was it the first or second one we talked about tonight?
Yeah. Oh yeah. You still married, right, Barney? Yep, I think so. That should have been his response. I will say also props to the production design part of the show for putting some fog behind Barney's window. I don't know if you noticed that or not. I was sure did. The fog in the episode. Here it is. Like, the one and only time I've ever seen anything behind is in this episode.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned the whole thing about the window with the architect episode. There's actually kind of a reference to that in this one, because when Lassick and Harris are talking, he looks towards us, towards that window, and is talking about there's microwaves all through this whole city. And I'm like, he's looking out that window again. So that's so odd that we never got that until 2 episodes ago, as far as I know. And now we have it twice within this one episode of our podcast.
Yeah, it's, again, like it's not that the show needed it, but it's just like it helps flesh out a really weird like thing that is like not a question I asked, but now it's like, oh, okay. Now it allows me to understand their space a little bit more, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the way, you mentioned it at the top of the episode, and now that we're here, I think it's time to have that conversation. Like, could this show really have ended on this note of what year is it? Shut up. The show ends. Like, could it have ended on that? Like, I think if it had ended one scene earlier where it's Barney sitting at his desk in his office and just looking kind of distraught, I think that could have been like a way to end the show without our characters getting what they want, as it were.
Well, there's that weird thing too, where this episode ends with him, standing there with all the guys, and you've got the guy in the cage playing the horn, and then the credits come up and we're still with these guys. We don't end on a freeze frame. We don't fade to black until after we get all the primary credits. And then you got fucking Harris smoking a cigarette, listening to the blues.
Yeah. Like, have we seen a credits overrunning footage in the show yet?
We have, but it's been a while.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember what it was, but yeah, I remember when it happened before. We definitely made note of it, but we I think this is probably like our 40th episode or something. So it's been a little while since we started this.
It's our 40th episode. Man, it's fucking crazy that we're done with the 6th season of this show, man. Yeah. Holy cow. I mean, we've watched 126 episodes of this show, right? Effectively.
It's so solid. And we kind of talked about this before with the whole overarching story segments now, but it feels like this season was just firing on all cylinders. Like when you're talking about the 3 guys on the couch talking with Barney, and I'm just looking at the person who's not talking just to see how they are reacting to the person who is talking. These guys, they are a unit now. Mm-hmm. Like these 4 main characters, look out. These guys are really, really good. And they just have that chemistry. And I'm so curious where we're going to go in the 7th season.
Bad hairdos. That much I know.
Okay.
I watched a little bit of the first episode of the 7th season, and I didn't like watch it. I watched it with the sound off, and all I could think was, oh my God, what happened to every single one of their hairdos? Wow. Yeah.
Oh boy.
I don't know if you're prepared for what Max Gale looks like in the next season in the first episode, but it is, if I didn't know the man wore a piece up until this point, which it looks really good. I mean, I think I didn't realize Max Gale was bald, but boy, the first episode of the 7th season, your ability to suspend disbelief is going to be tested.
Oh boy. Boy.
Yeah. I mean, we're still not in the 80s yet. Like, we're at 80 right now. The next season's 81. So it never gets all the way into where, they're showing up in, with like nothing garish. We're never going to get to that point because that's like mid 80s. So
it's that scene from Naked Gun where we see Nordberg try to come through the door with that huge afro.
Yeah, for no reason other than so they could put it in the trailer.
Yeah, fucking George Kennedy with like the big collar and everything. Yeah, that's right, my man. And they're doing the handshakes and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that. Like we're never. I don't think the show's ever going to get to that. I'm sure the only character that will get close is Harris because he's the character with a sense of style. But I agree with you. I don't think that the show's going to, quote, go downhill from here. I know Otto Bruno in his book talks about the 7th season being kind of not his favorite season, but the 6th season might be my favorite season of the show.
Yeah, so far, I totally agree. Unless they somehow kick it into a higher gear, I think we might be at the peak, my friend.
And I don't know if my favorite episode of the show is in this season, but I think in terms of like a body of 22 episodes. So what is that? Like 4 hours, 5 hours of TV? Mm-hmm. A pretty solid, if you were to just sit and watch it, start to finish, a pretty solid season of sitcom TV with a slight through line.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm curious where we're going to go when we come back next month and talk about the first 3, maybe 4 episodes. I'm going to have to see because we start off again with a 2-parter. So we're going to have to see how that goes. But next season, again, all known pet like all the time, except for one episode, the 14th episode called Rachel, which is directed by Homer Powell, who I don't think has been part of this mix at all. That name does not sound familiar to me.
Me either.
And then, our writers are going to stay pretty consistent. It's a lot of Sheehan, a lot of Stein, a lot of Dungan, and, the occasional other folks that come in here and do some things, but it's mostly them. And I'm really looking forward to see where they take us.
Agreed. And you know what? I'll say my favorite episode of this season, it's a tie between Uniform Days because of the interactions between Harris and Barney, and shockingly, for as much issue as I had with the first episode of this season, I did like the first episode of this season a lot. I mean, its handling of the homosexual angle still does irk me just a little bit, but irking me just a little bit is better than having an entire episode titled Rape.
Yeah.
Which irked me a lot and should irk anyone a lot. So
we didn't have as many episodes this time where we're like, oh, this didn't play well.
Right. Yeah. Wojciechowicz wasn't calling sex workers any sort of derogatory names for once. Shocking.
Yeah. Glad for that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, this was so far the best season of the show. The show has been just increasing in quality to this point. So yeah, I'll be curious to see, next season where it takes us. But this has been overall best season of the show so far, for me at least.
So Chris, when you're not talking about Barney Miller, who are you talking about?
And other cop shows and cop adjacent things. Columbo, we talked about Kolchak, you, I, and Father Malone of Noise Junkies and other Weirding Way Media podcasts the 3 of us do a show called Midnight Viewing, which is all about anthology TV, mostly focusing on horror stuff. And I do a weekly movie podcast as well called The Culture Cast. You can find all that at weirdingwaymedia.com. What about you, Mike White?
So also talking a lot about TV cops, including, like you said, Columbo, and also do a weekly movie podcast called The Projection Booth, which is available also at weirdingwaymedia.com. So basically I'm saying go to weirdingwaymedia.com. That seems to be the thing that you're going to want to do. We don't offer tote bags or anything. Maybe we will one of these days, but I'm saying that because I feel like I'm an NPR person who's just begging for money right now, but no, we're not. We're just telling you to go there and have a good time because why not? In this day and age, you definitely need a good time.
Every donation brings us closer to fulfilling our goal.
We have a challenge goal this hour.
Yeah. Would you like to learn more? Donate now and you too can get yourself a free PBS branded tote bag. Woo!